Hey everyone, I want to talk about how severe I felt at my worst, why the OCD urges are one of the strongest forces that an OCD sufferer needs to learn how to wear, because when the urges come in and you have that 0 to 100 sensation, it's very easy to think that you need to do something about those urges. This is a mistake that I made numerous times. It's an understandable mistake, but the urges feel as real as they can get, which then perpetuates the person to go into a compulsion or an avoidance cycle, etc., etc. So before I go any further, please subscribe, hit that like button, comment down below. As you see, I answer all my comments. It's freezing out here right now. I just got out here and realized I probably need a jacket, but it's a great little Stoic perspective. Forceful discomfort, as the Stoics used to call it. I think it's a great, great lessons to be learned in those type of things. And negative visualization, if you want to learn more about that, you can learn about that from Stoic podcasts and so forth. So, and info at OCDrecovery.com. If you're interested in our coaching services, webinar services, we will get back to you in a timely fashion. So, how bad did I feel at my worst? When I was admitted to the mental hospital, well, first of all, I didn't want to go. I was at a conference and there was only 2 people in the room, me and my wife. I wouldn't even call it a conference. It was supposed to be a very small group of people in our profession learning about a new technique, and no one showed up except for the teachers and us. And then what happened was, about an hour in, I was done. Constant 24/7 hyper awareness, constant 24/7 distraction. So I left and I went outside. And Erica eventually came and found me, and I was really suicidal. I said I didn't want to be here anymore. And I had been putting her through at this point, about 3 to 4 months of horrendous fears surrounding tinnitus. Sensory motor had just latched, threatening to take my own life multiple times a day. She just, probably from her perspective, looking at me, she said, "Who are you? I mean, my husband is gone. I don't know who you are," which was probably really scary for them. So you show the friends and family some compassion and empathy. It's very hard for them to see someone they love go through OCD and anxiety recovery, holding resentment against them and saying you don't understand, et cetera, does nothing. And we'll talk about that in the friends and family webinar that we're going to sometime plan in the upcoming future. So Erica said to me, we're going to go home. And I was like, okay. I remember I was sitting in the car kind of like this with that OCD stare. I'm just like, and I realized she wasn't taking me home. So I said, where are you taking me? And she started freaking out. I'm taking you to the mental hospital. I can't do this anymore. You need help. So seatbelt off, open the car, boom, tried to jump out. And she caught me. I was pretty much at my wit's end right there. Just because I just didn't have any tools. If I would have had the tools, if that relapse would happen to me right now, I'd have the tools to go, oh, okay, this was a drastic decision. I don't need to make that much of a decision. Rob and I were speaking today on the call about, whether someone asked us, what would be the possibility of one of you two harming yourselves? And we were saying it would be so astronomically low because there's no certainty. But because I understand the tools so well, I could handle a large amount of physical and mental discomfort, much more than I could 3 years ago. So as she drove me home, I convinced her to drive me home. So we didn't go to the mental hospital, and I went home. And then when I was home, I was in my room playing video games, and the door rang. And with my anger creating beliefs, I came outside and said, who the fuck is that? And she said, it's the police. And I said, are you shitting me? So 2 police officers came in, they sat me down, and I did what I did best. I lied. I said, I'm fine, there's nothing wrong. I was like, she's just kind of exaggerating. And the officer had the wits about him to say, I don't believe you. I think you're lying. And I said, it's because I am. So, the one police officer brought Erica into the hallway. She explained her side. In that moment, this is how I felt. The 2 police officers, I was sitting in the chair at the head of the table. The 2 police officers were here, and I just couldn't even hear them because it was just saliva, swallowing, saliva, swallowing, saliva, saliva. That's what it felt like to me. It was this just encompassing repetitiveness of dominant urges and sensation that many people miss because we always talk about thoughts and we talk about, sensations, but urges and images get the least amount of coverage, but the urges and the images can be so distressing because it freaks the sufferer out so badly. So what had happened was he said, look, I please let me take you in. I can't forcefully take you, but will you take yourself? So I said, sure. So we took me to the mental hospital. Because I volunteered to go with him, I thought it was going to be an involuntary Baker Act, which means that I would go to the mental hospital for, I was like 6 hours, have a talk and go home. But because the police officer took me in cuffs, he said to me, I got to put you in the back of my car and put cuffs on you. You're not under arrest, but I can't have you sit in the front of my cop car and us just shoot the shit. You got to sit in the back. So I went in the back. He put the handcuffs on me. My neighbors were like, because it was all kids from my grad school. They were like, oh my God, what did he do? And in my mind, I'm like, I can't stop noticing my saliva. Like, it's so funny when I think about it, because it's just like, that's what bred me to the mental hospital, my saliva, my salivary glands. So I get dropped off. They put me in an intake room. Okay, so there's an intake room before the mental hospital wing. And many people have heard me tell this story. I was in there for like 3 hours. There was nothing but a plastic mattress and a camera. So I'm like banging on the door. I'm like, what's going on? The nurse came in. I can imagine this job. Oh gosh, I can only imagine what you got to deal with. He said, you can't go home until, this was, I think, like Friday. You can't go home until Monday. I said, excuse me? He said, because the police officer took you, it's actually involuntary Baker Act and you have to stay here for 72 hours. I'm like, wonderful. So now I'm in this room. It's just me and my saliva and my swallowing and 24/7 chronic intrusive urges and hyper-awareness. And I couldn't even do anything to myself if I wanted to because there was constant cameras. And I was in that room for 30 hours. I slept in that room. The mental hospital wing was booked out, so I had to wait in that room to be processed into the mental hospital, which that 30 hours was not part of my 72 hours. I was there it was a fun time, to say the least. I was there for like 98 hours, 100 hours. It ended up being a great experience. I met some really interesting people in there. When they admitted me to the mental hospital, into the wing, I met all these individuals, you could say. There was people in there with, schizophrenia, severe bipolar, my cellmate, my roommate, great kid. He had been on benzo Xanax, I think he told me, for 16 years. And he just was a zombie, man, a zombie. Again, I'm just giving examples. I'm not talking down or putting up medications. Always speak to your provider. I'm just talking when I came in contact. But there was a common area where we'd get to pick 3 meals, and I would always at the end, typical me, people just were so they were in the mental hospital, so a lot of them wouldn't eat. So we would have dessert every time, and I would be like, do you want your cupcakes? And they'd be like, no, crazy kid. I remember sitting at the table talking to these 2 girls, and they were like, why are you here? You don't seem like you fit in here. And I was like, well, I'm like really in a bad spot. I can't stop thinking about my saliva and swallowing. And they're just like, what? That's when the psychiatrist came in with the intern, which I've told the story where they're like, you have bipolar, you're manic. I said, no, I'm not. And my anger beliefs at the time were horrid. You must understand me. You must hear me. Now, if I went back, they would be like, you have bipolar. And I would just be like, sure. Okay. I would be like, yeah, that could be it. Even though I know that, they can say what they want. But I was aggressive. I said, you're an idiot. You're a moron. You don't know what you're doing. You're the worst of the worst, Then he left me in there with the intern. You guys have heard me tell the story. And the intern has the clipboard, and she's like, hi. So I was like, yeah, what's going on? I was like, I'm in Cairo school. I'm almost toward the end. And we kind of started talking. And it probably was an odd experience for her because a lot of people in there were severely manic, were severely depressed, or suffering really badly with a schizophrenic episode where, they were speaking to people who weren't there, and walls and all that. Great trigger for people to hear with fear of schizophrenia. I remember I was on the basketball court, and this girl she was walking around me. I'll never forget this. I was on the basketball court. We had rec time. And she's like, the spirits are around you. And I'm like, that's great. I'm like, that sounds amazing. She just was it was a very interesting individual. We actually had some great combos. I was on all sorts of mood stabilizers. So the way I felt in those 96 hours was the epitome of no hope. I had felt like there was nothing left in my life to give me joy, right? I remember saying to myself, when I get out of here, I will take my life. The end. that 0 to 100ness that a lot of us deal with. I work with a lot of people who are perceived overachievers. There's no such thing as an overachiever. It's just a person who likes to get things done better than other people, so we label them as an overachiever. There's no such thing as an overachiever. There's no such thing as an underachiever. There's no such thing as an extrovert. There's no such thing as an introvert. These are just concepts. I mean, you have a person who goes, well, I like to stay in my house. Maybe they have a belief that they don't want to go out because they don't want to feel uncomfortable. So they label them as an introvert. No such thing. I know there's all these different personality tests and stuff like that. Once you break that down, you break those barriers down, you see straight through those things. Do they have merit when you're working with people who aren't going to understand the beliefs? Because we can't change anyone, sure, but it always is a belief thing. Whenever you're triggered at anything in your life, always look at the belief. Why am I mad? Why am I anxious? Why am I depressed? What is the belief system leading up to this? And what are the behaviors I'm not engaging in? Now, are there people that have lots of behaviors of wanting to stay in more? Sure. A lot of those people can have beliefs that they don't want to go around people because they're uncomfortable and they like their environment. They're not an introvert. They're just actually someone who has a lot of belief systems about not wanting to engage. Is that everyone? No, but it is an example. So that's key. As I was leaving the mental hospital, Erica picked me up, and it felt, 96 hours felt like the longest 96 hours of my entire life. So I remember she brought me home, and I went right back to video games. I think I played for like 24 hours. And when I was playing, I felt free. Many of you can relate to this. I felt this freedom that I had never felt before when I was playing video games. I had no hyper-awareness, and that's where I developed the belief system that recovery means hyper-awareness gone. That's where that belief system formed, because I was like, well, this is no suffering, so it must mean absence of all hyper-awareness. No, I was wrong on that. So a lot of people are telling you that, sensory motor recovery is absence of sensations. This recovery is absence of that. No, it's absence of the chronicity of the symptoms. Absence of chronic anxiety, shame, and guilt. Does that mean you'll never feel anxiety again? No. Does that mean you'll never feel shame and guilt again? No. I felt guilt the other day for a second. Rob and I were in a discussion. We got a little bit, I got a little bit heated because it's still a little bit work on that. And I yelled for like 5 seconds. I was like, okay, well, all right. I have a belief there. And after that call, I was in the gym and I said, man, that was dumb. I know better. I know better. And that's where the guilt said. And I said, wait a second. Human being, made a mistake. Dwelling on the past won't do anything. Go forward. The reason why that's so key is because when I would get those urges to confess, I'm sorry, I did this a lot as well, or I don't want to be here anymore. That was a sense of confession. I would constantly say, I don't want to be here. I can't deal with this. This is the worst thing ever. That would continually instill this belief system of low frustration tolerance. So when you are going through OCD recovery, okay, and you experience intrusive thoughts, images, sensation, urges, there is a hodgepodge of ways to go about this. Number one, breaking down the belief that experiencing that is not the end of the world, the fear of fear. Number two, wearing it like an uncomfortable coat. Number three, realizing a large part of you is analyzing this in an outward behavior, but on top of that, a lot of it is automatic. Many people hear me talk about the automatic rumination, automatic thoughts, sensation, images, urges. So people have this conception that they're like, the goal is to stop ruminating. It is not. The number one goal is to bring down the fear, and then the automatic intrusive rumination comes down subsequent in the future. Anyone with OCD understands this. It's very easy to lose track of this when you've never had OCD before. You just tell someone, or you've never had chronic OCD. There's a lot of people who have had mild OCD, never severe chronic OCD. I hear them talk about what they tell people, and I'm like, there's no way you had chronic OCD, because that doesn't work. Because I work with the most serious of the most serious. That's who we get. I get the people that don't leave their homes. I get the people that are on the edge. I get the people that are at their wits' end. They've been to numerous people, in and out of inpatients, outpatients. All those serious cases because of my particular experience of understanding how you feel, putting myself in your shoes, listening to you on one-to-one calls, and breaking down your belief systems. That is key. So key. So rumination is a symptom of the fear. It's a symptom of the worst case scenario that you haven't accepted yet. This is how you recover from OCD. You have a fear, and this isn't a blueprint, just to give you an idea. You have a fear, you have a core fear, and you have a worst case scenario about that fear. The fear of dying. Dying is the worst thing ever. That's the worst case scenario. Or going to hell, or the fear of being stuck anxious forever. Now you have intrusive realness, urges, sensation, images, thoughts that come in with this complexity of realness that feels like you are literally walking a plank into a pit of fucking sharks at any second. That's key. On top of that, you have compulsions, rituals, avoidance behaviors, self-reassurance, repeating mantras, an ocean of behaviors that are keeping you in that cycle. You perform them, and the cycle restarts. Fear goes to intrusive thoughts, images, sensation, urges coming in an automatic pattern that you can stop engaging with pretty quickly, but a lot of it will fire in the meantime because it's automatic. Then you have a realness of that intrusive thought, image, sensation, urges. That realness is what brings it all to light. It what turns the thermometer on. Then because of that, it feels so real, you think you have to run, and that goes into a compulsive ritual avoidance behavior. Wearing the urge, wearing the dire need that you have to ask someone a reassurance question, to get it off my chest. I just have to get it off my chest. No, you don't. You have to learn how to sit with it. And then they go, well, I'm not going to talk about OCD at all, right? Because we're black and white. Learning to sit with it. Understanding balance. Realizing that we could ask that person tomorrow. We don't have to ask them right now. We could do it later, delaying it, all of that. All of that leads to OCD and anxiety recovery, the absence of chronic guilt, shame, and anxiety, chronicity. Intrusive thoughts, images, sensation, urges have lost their intrusiveness. The pendulum swing from extreme emotional ends is still swinging because they're natural human emotions. Anger, but that's not chronic. It's basically a factory reset based off of rational perspectives from Ellis, Stoicism, and other areas of Greco-Roman philosophy, maybe such as Taoism and stuff like that. Well, that's not Greco-Roman philosophy. I'm just using that as a philosophy in general. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, if you like my story about the mental hospital, please let me know. Just remember, we can't hold animosity. We can, but you don't want to hold animosity against people who don't understand OCD. There's no point. It's a 0-0 ROI. The only person that affects is you because you have a belief system about them. They're never going to listen to you because they're a separate person. So the only person getting upset is yourself. So it's like taking your hand and just punching a brick wall over and over again. You're just like, why are you hurting me? It's like, well, you're doing it to yourself. So once you look at it in that funny fashion, you start to bring it down. Again, if you're interested in our coaching services and webinar services, please email info@OCD Recovery, and I'll talk to you soon. Have a good one, guys.